Hey there, welcome back to Aspect of the Day. Today we have Mercury trine Saturn in the birth chart. And I'm going to read through the astrologer's handbook and give some thoughts of my own along the way. But before I do that, just a quick review of what a trine is. A trine is a 120 degree relationship between two planets or thereabouts, which means that very often, but not always, they occur in two signs of the same element, which means that they're made of the same stuff. But they're in different modalities. So one might be cardinal, the other might be fixed, or one might be fixed and the other might be mutable, or any combination of those. And that's generally thought of as a very good aspect because the planets aren't stepping on each other's toes. They're made of the same stuff, element, so they know what they're about, so to speak. And they have different modes, different modalities. So they're serving different roles toward the same goals. So they're always working together. They know their place, okay? So which planet, whether it's Mercury in a cardinal sign and Saturn in a mutable sign or whatever combination you have, that's actually going to give this this aspect a unique flavor. Now, they could both be cardinal signs or they could both be fixed if the orb lends it to that, right? So that would mean that the planets are in different elements as well. So they're going to be made of different things, but serving the same role. So that's going to give the aspect a very different flavor. And I'm probably going to make more videos on that. Like what happens whenever you have those unique combination aspects that are not quite as common. You know, a trine in cardinal signs or a square in the same element in trine signs, you know. Those are very unique cases and not the norm. But regardless, I just want to remind you that what defines a trine, as with any aspect, is not the elements, not the signs that they're in, but rather the proximity to 120 degrees that the planets occur in. Okay, so for a trine, we allow an orb of about 7, maybe 8 degrees. So if you're within 7 or 8 degrees of 120 degrees, then you have a trine. Doesn't matter if they're in squared signs. That's not really important, okay? Because it is the proximity to the aspect itself that is going to give you the feeling of natural flow between these planets. All right. So in that regard, aspects are more important than signs, always, across the board. All right. Somebody might say, oh, I have my Mercury in Libra. And I'm like, great, cool. There are a handful of things that we could say about that. But how is Mercury aspected? Which other planets are contacting it, and how are they contacting Mercury? That's going to tell us a lot more about the state of your Mercury than what sign it's in. In the West, we really like to place a whole lot of emphasis on expression of our identity and our personality style. That's not what's important. That's what signs are about. Okay, they're of tertiary importance at best. Okay, especially when you get into certain Vedic techniques, we can dial in the place of the planet in the chart. The sign is 30 degrees. That's a large range that planets can fall in. Conceivably, you can have all of your planets in one sign, in one 30-degree area of the chart. And at that point, sure, the sign's going to matter. But each individual planet is going to be seeking its own identity in a way. So then the particular degrees of each planet are going to become more important. the proximity of each planet to its side-by-side planets, how tight each conjunction is within that stellium, is going to become more important than the sign itself. The nakshatra that each planet are in are going to be more important than the sign itself, because there are 27 of those, whereas there are only 12 signs. So the range for a nakshatra is a lot smaller. Right? So where you have shared specificity, the particulars become even more important in claiming, what does the identity of this planet look like? Okay. So anyway, let's get on with it. Mercury trine Saturn, generally thought of as a very positive aspect. Let's see what the Astrologer's Handbook has to say about it. This trine gives mental organization, especially favors mathematicians and scientists or others who must do exact systematic mental work in which there is little or no tolerance for error. It confers dexterity with the hands and will often be found in the charts of craftsmen who do precision work. Because of the ability it gives to deal with organizational responsibilities, this is a good aspect too for managerial work or political planning. Yeah, strategy is the thing that comes to mind, and precision of work. Now, this brings up a very important philosophical distinction: precision versus accuracy. Okay, precision is about hitting the same mark on the target time after time, being very exacting and consistent in what it is that you're doing. Accuracy is about hitting the right target or the right part of the target, having the correct aim, right? Being truth oriented in your work. That's what accuracy means. So in a sense, Mercury trine Saturn doesn't have anything to do with accuracy. It's about precision. Okay. So this immediately brings up a struggle, all right? Even though this is a very easy aspect to deal with in most occasions. Remember, a trine is a place where two planets don't really have to think about what it is that they're doing. They have a natural flow in that area. Okay. But as far as having their own authority, knowing what is true and good, that's another issue. It's just that because they're able to display consistency, they naturally find outlets for that ability to be disciplined and consistent at a very early age. And those typically take conventional forms, non-original forms. So this aspect can lend one toward locking themselves into structures that are conventionally acceptable, but not necessarily good at the end of the day. Okay, that depends on universal moral standards, which they might not be familiar with unless they're really on a spiritual path. So again, what I talk about all the time is that easy aspects are just easy to deal with. They're not necessarily good. I've seen plenty of people with plenty of hard aspects in their chart, myself included, who are on a path of moral goodness, more so than the person who has a bunch of trines in their chart, because the person who has trines in their chart is very disciplined, and the world rewards them for their consistency. And then they become a slave to those rewards and start acting out of efficiency. And as we know, the Nazis were very efficient and disciplined. Lots of trines happening there with their neat and tidy, spiffy little uniforms. All right, lots of easy aspects there in the most horrendous authoritarian regimes in history. Being efficient and organized and disciplined, it's not good. Depends how it's aimed in terms of truth and goodness. That's all that matters. Okay, so if there's one thing I'm going to tell you if you have this aspect, is to make sure that what you're doing is actually true and good, not because it just works. Yeah, it works in giving you resources and rewards back. That's not what makes it good. It being good is what makes it good. And that's beyond anything of material. that you might gain as a result of acting the way you do, following a path that you're on. All right. The natives make fine students, yes, because they're disciplined and they follow directions, because of their patience and capacity for hard work. Very hardworking, very good. While this aspect by itself does not give originality of thought, it does aid in its practical use and expression. Yes. So you're not going to be a brilliant artist if this is your main aspect and you don't have creative, original aspects elsewhere in the chart. Okay, having this doesn't preclude you from being creative and original. You just have to have other things going on that makes you so. This alone does not lend you toward that. Okay, so, but on its own, again, we're taking one thing on its own. What it does do is make for great managers and promoters and people who do bookkeeping and administration and who sort of run things. Remember, these people need a pre-existing structure to fall into so that their talents for being disciplined and hardworking and staying organized can be expressed. So what that ends up doing, if it's good, what it ends up looking like is it's serving the original thinker or the original parts of your chart. This is a tool, right? It gives a nice structure, foundation for the creative person, for the original thinking person to have a means and a platform for expression, right? Because very often someone who's very original in their thought and creative, myself included, has a hard time staying disciplined and consistent in their work and pushing themselves to do the things that they're meant to do on this earth and in this life. And so this is one of those great teamwork aspects. It makes you a good team worker. Someone who, hopefully, if you see the value in other personality types and other gifts that other people have that maybe you don't, then you can lend your skills to them so that they can be the best that they can be, right? Again, I talked about the authoritarian risk here in this aspect, like without even thinking, right? Well, think about it. How are you aiming it? How are you serving the world? How are you truly serving others? Not serving the structure itself that you've enslaved yourself to. Okay, very, very, very important distinction for someone with especially an easy aspect between two very dry planets, generally, like Mercury and Saturn. Earth-ruled planets, remember. Earth and air, okay? Anywhere there's just earth and air in the rulership, consider those planets to be kind of dry on their own. They need some heart. They need some inspiration. They need some spiritual guidance. This is also a favorable aspect for writers and teachers, giving a much more practical outlook and more ability to pay attention to details than does Mercury trine Jupiter, right? Because Jupiter is more about the big picture and wants all the inspiration and the creativity and the philosophy that comes along with that, and vacillates with Mercury between big picture details, big picture. So the Jupiter side of that equation can't always stay on task in a way that Saturn can, right? Saturn just has to be on the right task. And as long as they stick to it, then they're serving the world in a positive way. It's not merely selfish. Then that's good. Good memory is characteristic of this trine. Yeah, very good. The structure building aspect of the mind in general is improved. Right? It's about structure. It's about the skeleton, the frame of things that underlies all the content. All right. Persons with this aspect usually view life seriously and tend to be disciplinarians. Right. And I kind of took that to the next level. Authoritarian if it's untamed. Their moral character and self-control are excellent. Again, if it's aimed properly. You can say that, oh, I have a lot of self-control because I'm consistent and efficient in my work. Yeah, but if you're working for Satan, then your moral character it's strict, it's disciplined, but it's not good. All right? I'm really more of a spiritual teacher than I am an astrologer, in case you haven't noticed. All right? And that's what you get in a reading with me. From a Saturn perspective, by the way. Yeah, provided the rest of the horoscope has no strong inclinations to the contrary. Right. That's always the disclaimer with any aspect where we're talking about the positives. Because there are inherently no positives. There are inherently no negatives. It's all about the will. It's all about, are you aligning your authority with God's authority? That's the only thing that matters. Everything else is just a means to an end, a tool that we use to reinforce that. These natives are loyal friends. Yes, can be bad as well. If you're loyal to the wrong person, but not inclined to flattery. Any compliment from them is well earned. Yes. They only give credit where it's due. Due in their eyes, based on the moral framework of judgment that they've committed themselves to. Is that the right framework? That's a question that astrology itself cannot answer, but I can help you answer if you get a reading with me. So hit me up via the links below. Hope you've enjoyed this aspect of the day episode. Compliments of the Astrologer's Handbook, always a recommendation. You guys have a nice day. Cheers.